Hello, good people. This is for, and also for not my hypermobile people. Now, my channel grew so much because of my 2 hypermobility videos that I made, and I've been getting so many questions and comments about it, and unfortunately, I don't have the time and resources to answer and reply to every single one of them and make content on all the suggestions, but I really love to help and keep guiding you in the right direction that will help you understand your bodies even more, which in turn helps alleviate pain and tension and frustration with our own bodies. So in this video, I'm going to share a lot of resources of all the certifications and things that I've personally learned that gave me the amount of knowledge that I know about the human body, which in turn helped me understand how to work with hypermobility clients a little bit better. Now, I don't claim to be a hypermobility specialist. I'm just really good at movement. So when things I see is out of the norm, I always ask myself, what can I do to make this a little better? And I personally feel like that's the intent we need to have for each person that we see as practitioners, and for you as a mover, try to feel what is more normal inside your own body. And that's the only thing you need to keep asking yourself. What feels more normal or what feels better? And so in the description below is going to be a list of all the resources that I personally think might be able to help you along your hypermobile journey. Doesn't mean that any one of these is going to fix it all, but it will just give you more guidance of where you need to approach it. But before that, I want to share some pieces of advice that hopefully will guide you along this journey a little bit more. And I want you to understand that if you're hypermobile, you're not broken. You're just loose. And loose things can be tightened or stabilized a little bit at a time. Think that the muscles are like just rubber bands, and while hypermobile, you have very long, thin, and more fray rubber bands, and so they're a lot more stretchy. And so if you keep stretching the rubber band, it just gets more and more elastic, and once it starts losing that elasticity, it has a higher chance of breaking and snapping or pulling and injuring that band. But we don't have just one band. And we can always train the body to build more muscle so that there's more bands supporting each other. So even if all the bands are a little bit more fray, if you have 10 or 20 bands instead of just one, that means strengthening and building tissues and fascia and ligaments to get a little bit stronger, then we can actually have more support. Now, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be as stable as someone who has normal joints, but it means that your body will have more support. And that's all we're looking for, just a little bit more a day at a time. And the biggest thing I want you to understand about hypermobility is that the fundamentals of movement are still the same. We still need to learn how to connect our foot to the pelvis and the core, to the neck and the shoulders and the upper back to feel the alignment. And that's what I talk about throughout this entire channel, is building that awareness of learning how to understand how to move from the ground up and from the center out. So connecting the foot to the head and connecting the core to the extremities, and then learning how to move from the inside out and the outside in. And so try not to think that there's only specific exercises or videos built for hypermobility. Everything on my channel helps along with that process. It just depends how much you need to do or how little. So for some hypermobile specific exercises, if you do those and you don't feel better, that means either we're not fully connecting with that movement, or it's just not for you at that time. Don't think it's a bad exercise. It's just not well executed, or it's just not well for you at that point in time. And that goes for everyone who's suffering from pain and tension, is that if you're doing an exercise, whether you're mobilizing or you're stretching or strengthening, and that movement just does not feel right and is creating more tension and conflict afterwards or during, that doesn't mean it's good. Usually it means that we're doing something inefficient throughout that process, which is creating conflict within our bodies. And so I highly recommend you to be more patient and either skip that exercise completely and try to find something else to help complement it. And when you find the right exercise, your body will tell you, it will feel good. And that's where a lot of people who were commenting felt great doing it, but others felt like, oh yeah, this doesn't feel good on my knees when I'm trying to stabilize my shoulder. We got to find something else. And unfortunately, there's no specific one that I can give you that's going to help with that. And that's where the resources will come in, which I'll explain in a little bit. Again, the fundamentals are still the same, but learn where your end range of motion is. For example, if your shoulder moves so far behind your ears, that's probably very, very unstable over there. And so if you're going that far and it doesn't feel good, and that's when you feel some pinchiness, cracking and popping and stuff like that, stop, back off 30 to 50%, depending on how loose your body is. So for example, if my body can go all the way here, but it's unstable over there. Back off 30%. Oh, this actually feels somewhat okay, and the ligaments don't seem like it's hanging or popping or grabby, then that's the range that I want to teach my body how to work in, right? If your shoulders are shrugging up over here, try back off a little bit and see what it feels like for the shoulder to sit a little bit more. But if you pull too far down and you feel pinching or pulling, that's also too much. And so you want to feel the distance between those 2 points to see, does your shoulder feel a little bit more stable? You can always stretch your fingers and let them, and have them fold back behind you. Probably don't go that far. Stop testing those end range limits. You know your joint can go there. But if it's creating tension and conflict, stop before that. Just move your joints a little at a time. Don't go fully to the end range. Back off and move between the two end ranges so that your joints are never constantly reaching that capacity that it's about to overstretch. So like a rubber band, if you pull it so far to its end range, it's going to start losing that elasticity, and over time when you let it go, the rubber band is actually going to be even more longer and more flimsy. And so you don't want to keep stretching the rubber band to the end range every single time. But if you work between it, you can still generate tension, but not instability. Does that make sense? And so work within those tension lines where you can feel the engagement, but not over pull. And that goes for every movement, whether it's squats, whether it's lunges, whether it's pulling things towards you, whether it's lifting things up. Try not to go past your end ranges. The biggest challenge when we're hypermobile is that the alignment is so much harder to find because we have unstable foot, unstable hip, unstable core, shoulders, and neck. So all of it is very, very wobbly. It's almost like Jenga missing a bunch of those blocks. And so any type of excess movement is going to make the entire thing collapse. The goal is to start putting those pieces in so that the Jenga block is nice and stable so that when you push down, it's not going to flop over and stuff like that. And so as we add stability, the body is going to be more engaged and feel safer, hence less tension. So with all movements, feel that end range and back off 30 to 50%. Now another point is try not to find the pain. When things are achy and tight in our neck or the shoulders or whatever it is, typically we're like, oh, it hurts there, and you want to keep challenging and stretching it and pushing it past that point. Back off right before you feel that pain. And so if you keep looking for it, you're going to find it. But if you feel the pain over here, oh, that hurts there, back off a little bit and just move to the point right before you feel any pain. The brain will start realizing, oh, that movement's actually okay. So those tissues and the brain has a higher chance to be able to heal that space. So if you're not looking for it, over time, your body might give you more range of motion when it's not going to hurt as much. It's almost like a healing wound. If it's starting to scab and you keep picking on that scab, you're going to make it bleed again, and it's going to stop that healing process and you have to start over. You can still touch it, you can still move it, but don't pick on it and make it bleed. And so when we're looking for that pain, if the shoulder's popping, if the hip is popping, we typically want to keep pulling and crunching and trying to stretch it, and we keep looking for that pain, trying to make it go away. It makes no sense to do that. The body wants to do that though. The human brain is innately kind of dumb where our impulses are usually incorrect. And so back off from wanting to keep finding that pain and just let it be, let it settle, and let your body move within ranges that actually feel okay and doesn't hurt, and the body will heal a lot better for that. Another tip is to try and feel if you're forcing the movement, as in trying to over squeeze, trying to pull, try to over activate, like squeezing 100% for every single one of those movements. Or are you just letting go and just feeling the body move through space in a more connected and engaging manner instead of tensing and trying to pull as hard as you can? That is literally the hardest part of everything I teach for all of my clients, hypermobile or not, is learning how to regulate tension with all the movements we're trying to do. Now, if your body is unstable, the body will naturally always try to grip even harder to try and prevent the body from falling apart. But if you teach your body that we can relax, we can stack the joints on top of each other without overly engaging, you're stressing out the nervous system a lot less and you'll start feeling safer quicker, not easier. I'm saying it's hard to feel this. It's exponentially more difficult to learn how to soften when learning movements instead of adding more tension. But if tension is creating conflict, that's when we want to back off and use more engagement and letting go in order to feel your body a little bit better. Doesn't mean you're getting weaker, it actually means you're more connected. And if you're more connected, you will naturally be stronger. But if the connection's not there and you keep forcing it with tension, it's just gonna make things worse. And are you breathing and connecting through the process every single time? 1 rep at a time. Now another point is turning frustration into curiosity. So when you're trying a movement and you're trying to do these exercises and you get very annoyed because you're too tense, you're engaging too much, things are hurting, things are aching, take a breath, slow it down, and then try to break down the pieces. A lot of times we have these self-deprecating thoughts. It's like, I hate my body, this sucks, it's hurting, nothing is working. When you start feeling that frustration, take a breath, calm it down, and tell your body, I'm learning right now. Like, it's always frustrating to learn new things at the same time. It's borderline overwhelming, but once you connect it, your body will not forget. And so that's the idea, is to keep curious about all of those movements instead of getting angry and giving up immediately. Take your time with it. As long as the fundamentals are still there, you're not going through the end ranges of motion, you're not looking for the pain, and you're trying to understand when you're tensing up and learning how to let go, those principles apply to all movements that you're trying to do. And I highly recommend you to keep those principles in your mind when you're trying to do everything else. And some days are gonna be good, some days are bad. I ask you to capitalize on those good days. Some days we wake up and be like, man, everything's just connecting and stuff like that. That is fantastic. So take that time to do the movements better and keep connecting with it more, so that when you have a bad day, you're like, oh, you know what? It's harder to connect. Still try a little bit, and if you really can't connect on the bad day, just let it go. Tell your brain, it's fine, I'll come back another day and do that again. And so the more you just keep capitalizing on those good days and you're taking these principles into account, over time we'll have more good days than bad days. And that's the only thing we can do, is just to constantly have more good days and bad days. It's okay to have both, but we want more good than bad, obviously. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight of like how to think and approach movements from here on out. And I'm going to share with you a bunch of resources that could potentially help, and I'll explain to you each one, so maybe it will give you some tips of what to look for in your area. And going through a video like this is fantastic, but a lot of the times we need in-person help, and I highly suggest you to do so if you can and have the resources and means to do so. Now, on the movement perspective, I highly recommend, a lot of times with EDS and hypermobility, we have pelvic floor issues. And so if you do have access to be able to find a good pelvic floor physical therapist to be able to assess how your internal pelvic floor and core muscles are actually working, and you realize the fundamentals of pelvic floor activation is the same as what I just taught. You're not tensing as hard as you can. You're learning just how to feel. Sometimes you just need to breathe into that pelvis and learn how those muscles are actually working. So a lot of times we have pelvic floor dysfunction, which is what actually creates a lot of internal conflicts, which is why the entire body becomes unstable, because the core is just not doing the job that it's supposed to be doing. Good pelvic floor PTs can go internally to assess how those muscles are working, and they can feel what's happening, and you can learn how to engage with them assisting you and stuff like that. It's not just for females, males can also do it as well, depending on how disconnected your core muscles are. DNS practitioners stands for Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. These are fantastic ground-based movements with a lot of breathing patterns and very, very scientific approach. This came from learning how babies moved. So this is developmental sequences that we learned of, like how to lie on the ground, how to move our head, how to breathe. So we're training the eyes, the vestibular system in the ears, to the intrinsic muscles in the core, the hips, to all work as a unit, and they break down the movements very, very fine-tuning depending on what the body needs. And so very high-level DNS practitioners can most likely help with hypermobility issues, because we're learning how to be able to stabilize the body from the ground up and from the breath out. Original Strength is one of my favorite systems as well. They have a great YouTube channel that teaches a lot of these concepts. Original Strength is also similar to DNS, where we're learning how to move from babies from the ground up and learning how the joints stack over each other. And so we're training the eyes, ears, core, hips, shoulders to all move as one unit. and they call them resets of like really just allowing the body to relax into these stable positions and then train your body to get more resilient over there. Functional training practitioner, similar to what I do, is just teaching movements from every joint in the body and learning how they all function as a unit. That is something I definitely recommend, and most of the times it's not just one system that we learned through a cascade of other movement practices. And so look for other practitioners that have learned a lot of modalities and know how to be able to communicate it with your body and see what works. Z-Health practitioners. This is a really great neurological system where they essentially just training your brain to remap new movements into it. My friend Missy Bunch has a great channel on all of that. I'll list it in the descriptions below as well. PRI, it's called Postural Restoration Institute. This one is also great to teach your body how to recorrect posture simply just by breathing and putting your body in positions where it can find more neutral alignment. And again, all those principles and movements will stay the same, but a lot of times when we get the body to be able to calibrate and learn where neutral is and breathing through that, huge benefits could stem from there. FRC stands for Functional Range and Conditioning. I won't say this is for everyone that's hypermobile, but for some people, especially who have a lot of muscle mass and just have joints that are slightly unstable, FRC could work very well because it's training you how to build stability through full end range motions and training those ligaments to hold length and strengthen at the same time. But it is tension based, and so for a lot of people who actually don't thrive off tension, I'd say back away from that. But some people thrive off from it. So you have to test it out and see what works for you. Tai Chi, one of my favorite movement practices to be able to teach the internal environment and the external to move as unison in peace. And so we're learning how to breathe, how to move our energy from the inside and learn how to move those joints with as little tension as possible. When done right, it is immensely healing, but we really have to be patient with our bodies, not just doing the movement, but feeling what those movements are doing to the body. This is going to be huge. Rock tape is a kinesio tape that a lot of PTs use in their system to be able to pull the skin and the fascia together, and that, when done right, can actually hold the joints in place a little bit better to make you feel slightly more stable when you're just moving through life. So that's something you can play around with as well. Stress management is something that obviously we also want to take into account. So if you are very high strung, high anxiety, everything overwhelms your body and stuff like that, and you're hypermobile, and we add personal life stuff on top of that, it can be very overwhelming for the body. So seek any type of help that you can get, whether it's through personal practice of meditation, trying to self-develop yourself, that you learn how to manage stress a little bit better, or seeking mental help with therapy and things like that to help guide you along that process of learning how to be able to take inputs and reduce the amount of stress it creates the body, that the output becomes less stressful. That's all it is. And so if you're struggling to do that on your own, hiring someone to help guide you through that process could be huge. Internal medicine could also be a really good help if you have a good acupuncturist or a naturopath that can actually direct your body to be able to learn how to be able to heal from the inside out. Because a lot of times we're missing certain supplements or minerals, or we have genetic dispositions or Lyme disease or all this bunch of stuff that a good functional medicine practitioner can actually do blood work and find out where the imbalance is at, and hopefully get your body to be realigned with that. I do recommend finding a practitioner that's less invasive, that you're not taking 20, 30 supplements at a time, that can really try and dial things in, that helps you a little bit. It took me 4 different naturopaths until I found the one that actually nailed it, that I'm feeling so much better with my own body now. It is patience, it is investments. Unfortunately, I was spending over $1,000 a month for years trying to figure out my own body and my own health issues. But now it seems like it's on the tail end, but patience is key. Learning what is going to work for you doesn't mean it's going to work instantly, but when you feel it, you will know. Regenerative medicine could also be something to look into as well. If you have a lot of ligament laxity, a lot of times, especially if you've been stretching and cracking your body a lot, if you've been going to like chiropractors and stuff like that, and you feel like you're getting adjusted more and more and more, and you constantly need more adjustments to get that temporary relief, but it's never holding or feeling better, I would say be cautious on that. because if you adjust too much, those ligaments actually just get looser and looser, which could create strain and damage to those ligaments over time, especially when the body's already hypermobile, it's already unstable, and if you keep destabilizing those joints, then it's going to constantly keep tightening up, which also feeds into that loop, thinking that you need more adjustments instead of actually realizing you probably don't, you need to be more stable. This is where regenerative medicine can come in, where they can actually, for example, Prolotherapy or PRP. Those are two different types of injections. So Prolotherapy is a combination of dextrose and lidocaine that they put into a needle, and they can inject into a specific site of a joint or ligament or injured area. And basically, that injection forces your body, its own satellite cells, to start healing. PRP is similar to that, but more advanced. They would take your own blood cells, oxygenate it, and inject it into the site of damage, and it allows the body to heal. Stem cells is another way to be able to do that as well, but even more expensive, but they can almost treat the whole body, where you're using your own cells and they inject it into those injured areas to be able to allow the internal body to actually start healing on its own. So when we have a lot of ligament and tissue damage, those are great modalities to use, but unfortunately, most of the times, insurance doesn't cover that, and it's big out-of-pocket money. So if you have the resources, that's something that you can look into. Laser treatments can also help, where they just have lasers pointing into a specific site of damage, and that stimulates the cells to be able to heal. Red light therapy, saunas, cold plunges, all of those are also good resources to essentially help the nervous system calm down, increase circulation, and allow the body to flush out inflammation and allow the body to heal a little bit better as well. So I know I talked about so many different things, and try not to think that you have to do every single one of these to get better. Go by your intuition and see what might work the best for you, and start with one thing at a time. Whether it's the nutritional side of reducing anti-inflammatory foods and sugars and all of that stuff to see if that helps, or seeking a naturopath, or just doing basic mindful movements and stuff like that. That's what I'll keep helping you with this channel on. But if all of these things don't work, seek the other guidance to see if they can help tip the scale a little bit. And that's the trial and error that we'll have to go through. Some things will work, some things won't. Even if something specific for hypermobility, you might try it and it might make things worse. And other things that's not even for hypermobility, it's just a good movement, and you do that, it could feel better. So I challenge you to just take those principles into account again, learning how to move within your end range of motions. Try not to find the pain, but move within your pain points. Try to feel engagement instead of tensing every single muscle group in your body, but just feeling the right muscles do the work. Are you breathing throughout that process? And be curious about your bodies and see what it's trying to tell you what to do. If you keep ignoring it, then the pain will keep coming back. And so try out what resources work for you. Learning to be able to move pain-free is a process. So be patient, compassionate with yourself, and try to keep working on enjoying the dabbling process of learning how to be able to move your body a little bit more each day. My name is Andy Shea from Movement Reborn. Hopefully that helps, and keep connecting. I'll see you next time. Bye.